stop grinding scales and arpeggios for now. Before you spend hours running through scales and arpeggios, there's something you need to know. Most people are practicing them wrong, and it's holding them back from real progress. Do you ever feel like your scales sound robotic, uneven, or perhaps too slow? I want to show you in this video what to focus on first to make your scales and arpeggios more musical and more effective. Now, practicing scales and arpeggios is important, but it's no shortcut to better playing and better technique. Because I find a lot of people practice them in a way that is too mechanical and lifeless. Without the right technique and musical approach, scales and arpeggios become a bit of a waste of time. Scales aren't just finger exercises, they're musical tools. Practice them like music, not like drills. Here are some things you must learn before you practice scales and arpeggios. Number one is to build finger strength and control. If you ever get a feeling that your scales and arpeggios sound uneven or sloppy, it's usually because of weak finger control. And here are some ways to fix that. You want to focus first on finger-independent exercises. Things like Hanon can be a really good resource. What Hanon is particularly useful for this problem is that Hanon doesn't have any thumb tucks or wrist turns. So you can practice playing each and every note very, very evenly without the worry of the thumb tucks. Next, you want to focus on relaxing and tension control. Very, very loose throughout your scale and arpeggios playing. Here are some quick exercises for you to focus on these problems. Exercise number one is finger lifts. You can essentially do finger lifts for any exercise, whether it's scales or arpeggios or Hanon or even your real pieces. But the idea is that you're gonna lift up your finger extra high to kind of like press down to strengthen the weaker fingers. Particularly you're gonna find this with finger number 4 and 5. So let's just say even with a 5-finger position. Okay, let's say here, people usually find weakness in number 4 and 5. So you can try, and when it gets to 4, you lift your 4th finger as high as you can before you strike it down. So instead of, you can do something like, even with this one, with the pinky, lifting up as high as you can and striking this down as a bit of an exercise. One quick one I can recommend for you is to hold down 1, 2, 3 on the C position and play 4 and 5. This one's gonna probably hurt your fingers after a while, but gee, this really helped me build some strength in 4 and 5. Exercise number 2 is slow motion scales. So play your scales painfully slow to focus on evenness of sound. So, you know, like for example, let's say you're playing the C major scale. I find that a lot of people tend to accent on the F because of the thumb tuck. For example, they'll play like this. That thumb tuck is that area where you kind of have to do a bit of finger gymnastics, and so there is a little bit of unevenness there. So I want you to play this and practice it painfully slow, like. Until each of the 8 notes are completely even in strength. A good way I like to advise my students is, rather than thinking you have 5 fingers, I want you to almost imagine you have 8 fingers. Okay, so, and when you're playing this scale, there is no need to thumb tuck, and you want to make people believe you have 8 fingers. Okay, so let's say playing this one. Right, you make people almost like can't tell where your thumb tuck was, just because of how even it is from top to bottom. Focus number 2 is on dynamics and articulation. Most people run through their scales without thinking about these things. But remember, we want to play scales as musically as we can. So we want to make sure we're thinking about dynamics and articulation, particularly dynamics. So dynamics is all about loudness and softness. One great idea that one of my ex-teachers taught me was to play scales with swells. So, which means as you go up, you get louder, and as you come down, you get softer. So something like this. Try it this way. It instantly makes your scale less robotic, a lot more musical, a lot more live, because it feels as if like someone is breathing when you do that. This is also a general musical principle I want to share with you in this video too, which is that every time notes get higher, you can get a little bit louder, and when the notes fall, you can get a little bit softer. So second thing is to focus on articulations. Okay, there are 2 main articulations in music, legato and staccato. So you want to make sure you're practicing also staccato. A lot of people play legato for scales, but they forgot to do staccato. Very, very important for building technique. Sometimes you can even do alternate articulations. So one hand do legato, the other one staccato. Focus number 3 is to use scales and arpeggios in context. So instead of practicing scales in isolation, you can also practice them within the pieces that you want to play. This makes the practice more relevant and effective. Okay, so you're trying to bridge your scale and arpeggios practice to your real repertoire practice. For example, let's say with scales, a common one that comes to mind for me is Mozart's Sonata in 3, K545. So right, very, very difficult. How do I get this to that kind of like even crispness? I think I still have more to improve here. Not easy to do, but this one's a really good one to kind of like practice scales within a real piece. An example for arpeggios could be, let's say, Nouvelle Bianche by Einaudi. Pay attention to my left hand. Left hand was doing a whole bunch of broken arpeggios. Once you practice scales and arpeggios with the right approach, they become powerful tools for improving your speed, control, and most importantly for me, musicality. Tip number 1 for scales and arpeggios: don't rush them. Practice them slowly and intentionally. Tip number 2, I want you to incorporate musical elements such as dynamics and articulations. These things breathe some life into your scales and arpeggios. From kind of like mechanical little routines, they become musical phrases. You want to really aim for that. Tip number 3 is just to make sure you're doing them every day. Scales and arpeggios should be part of your routine. A piano player's job over time is to learn all 12 majors and minors, and you want to do this for both scales and arpeggios. If you wanted more ideas, by the way, on what kind of pieces you can practice to marry your scale and arpeggios practice to kind of real pieces, feel free to download my free Essential Piano Roadmap, where I literally list out what kind of pieces I think you should be playing and practicing in each level of piano playing. They are pieces that have worked for me and my students for more than a decade. I trust them wholeheartedly, so feel free to download that free PDF in the link below. And also, if you're interested on sort of having a deeper dive into piano, okay, not just with scales and arpeggios, not just with pieces, but more of an overview, all-encompassing, all-comprehensive course, I recommend you to check out my upcoming course, The Keys to Mastery. In Keys to Mastery, I'll be teaching you all the techniques, the pieces, the exercises that you need to play piano with confidence. Join the waitlist in the description below. So my final message to you, scales and arpeggios, these are tools to help us play more effective and better music. Don't just grind at them mindlessly. Focus on the right technique foundation, focus on making them musical, and you'll be on a much better path to piano mastery. My favorite scale to practice is E major. What is your favorite scale to practice? Let me know in the comments below. Catch you in the next one.